Dear friends, often when people say, I believe in God, I'm tempted to ask, which one? Now you might think that's rather odd. The God. There aren't any others, are there? True, but sometimes people have such different ideas on who God is or what God is to the point that it's almost like believing in a different God. Sort of like having a conversation with someone who insists that their car is not behaving very well. When you begin to ask them about their car, they talk about how it eats too much, how its fur gets too dirty, and as they begin to continue, you realize they're talking about a horse, and yet they're using the word car. Sometimes I think that when I'm discussing God with other people. They use the word God, but for all intents and purposes, they're talking about something else. So for example, people might say, I believe in the supreme being or a supreme being. Or they say, I don't believe in a supreme being. My proper answer to that is, neither do I. God is not a being. He's not even the supreme being because he's not a being at all. Here's what we mean in the Catholic Church when we say the word God. We don't mean one more being among others. So for example, in classic philosophy, there's a talk of the chain of being. Think, you've got worms, and birds eat worms. They're higher up on the chain of existence, almost like the food chain. And then you have above the birds, you have more complex beings or animals like cats and dogs, and eventually you get up to humans, moving up the chain. Well, if God is the supreme being, then he's just simply farther up the chain. He's one more being amongst others. And that's exactly what we don't mean about God. No wonder the new atheists don't believe in God, because it makes God just some kind of super intelligence, just a little better than ourselves. But that's not what we mean. We believe God is being itself. As St. Thomas Aquinas would teach us, that God is not one being. In fact, God is the one who creates out of nothing all beings that exist. He holds them in existence. Simply by his will, they continue existing, because without God, they would have no existence. He's not one more being among others. He is his own act of existence, the one who calls into existence everything else and holds it there in existence. He's not on the chain. He created and upholds the chain of being. For example, when people say, I believe in a higher power, well, I believe in many higher powers. They're called angels, definitely more powerful than I am, and yet they're not God. God is not just a higher power. He's not farther up the chain. He's the one who has always existed and always will exist, who existed when there was no such thing as time. You might say, as Moses learned in the burning bush, God is, I am who am. The one who, without limit, is infinite. The one who created time, created the universe all out of nothing, who sustains us all. That's what we mean by God. I say this because so often people reject God or reject belief in God because they have a conception of him as just one more being, although a super one, on the chain of being. And that seems ridiculous, and I would happen to agree. But what we mean by God is something far more profound. The one who cannot not exist. The one who has no limits. And yet is so amazing that he creates us, tiny as we are, out of love. That, my friends, is the God I believe in. That is the God we believe in the Church. Which God? That one.